All right, here we go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to another edition of Crypto World Radio. I am here joined by none other than Garland Wan by Momentum from Momentum Six, and also our buddy, beloved member of the Because Bitcoin community, Theo Payne. I want to remind you guys if you're watching
What's
this
going
from
on, man?
YouTube. What's going on, brother? I want to remind you guys if you're watching from YouTube, be sure to like, comment any feedback, click that subscribe button, turn on bell notifications so that you get daily alerts from all of our shows throughout the day, Monday through Friday. We've got a morning show for you guys, an afternoon show, a midday show, and then to wrap up your day right here on Twitter Spaces, your one and only beloved frog on a rocket, King Wabi the First. And thank you guys here on Twitter Spaces for joining the conversation. Towards the end of the space, we'll bring up some of you if you have any statements or any questions that you want to ask. And, just a little bit of a background on how I came across Garlam. I've followed his company page, Crypto Illuminati, for a while now and have gone into his spaces. And then I think it was like early last week where I decided to click that request button, try out my luck. And lo and behold, me and him share a little bit of a bromance moment, reminiscing on the 2017 cycle and also kind of like that echo bubble from 2019. And it's always great connecting with crypto natives. And Garlam, correct me if I'm wrong, but you had said that you were one of Harmony One's first employees and you ran that campaign back in the day. Am I
Yeah,
right on
I think
that?
I was like the sixth or
All
seventh employee there. Yeah,
all
yeah.
right. So, guys, we have a crypto OG, and it's great to have him here. Garlam, outside of the bromance that was kindled last week, go ahead and introduce yourself, brother.
First of all, great intro. We should be doing that. This is like very professional. We just like kind of go into the conversation. But yeah, thanks for the intro. Garland from Momentum Six here. Like uncertified DGen, we do a lot of very risky like investments and like pretty degenerate investments throughout 2020, 2021, which paid off pretty handsomely. We can only do it because we're GP capital, so we don't have any outside capital. It's just all our money that we're kind of rolling with. And then yeah, we have three different disciplines right now. So we have marketing side, which is a separate brand that's under like going through like separation of entity at the moment. So we have a marketing side and we have an investment side, which is called Momentum Six, and the one that King Wabi just was mentioning was the Research Collective, which is a Zero X Illuminati. So we're the core members at the moment, but we have other contributors that are kind of contributing to, research content. So we do our biggest channel is on Telegram with about 20,000 people. We do a lot of like daily kind of summary into what's going on in the industry so that you don't have to go to like 50, 60 different pages to kind of understand just the lay of the land or like pulse on the market. We kind of do all that research for you on Twitter, on Telegram, on Discord, and we just kind of summarize it into nice little one nugget that you can kind of see on a day-to-day basis, right? So yeah, that's a little bit about us, but yeah, like we'll probably like go into more onto that after. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can
Oh,
hear you, man.
awesome.
Um, it looks like Wabi. I don't know if Wabi had a connection issue or something.
Oh, no worries. Yeah,
Here,
it happens. Yeah. Oh, he's
we
waving.
can't hear you, Wabi.
Yeah, you're waving, but can't hear you. I don't know what's going on. But yeah,
Here, let me text him real quick.
yeah, I can ramble on a little bit. Oh well.
No, I'm here, man.
Okay, okay.
I got you. So, dude, what was it like being early at Harmony? How did you start there and how did you find them? Like what was it like working in the early days? Because that's super interesting to me.
Yeah, so I was working for a venture capital firm based out of China, and because no one knew what they were doing before, like, they gave me the position of like being a like the managing director for the US arm. So I was doing that, and obviously we were heavily invested into. We were an ETH fund back in 2018. So when ETH hit, over $1,000, that was amazing for all of us. But obviously we know what happened after that. ETH hit, I think, $80 at the end of the year, and the fund has to disband. And I also took a lot of like leverage positions, and like basically zeroed myself out on various different ICOs and things like that. So yeah, I was like had the most amount of money that I've seen, and then lost the most money amount I've seen, and I did this like three times in the like over the cycle of my career. So
Many such cases.
yeah, many such cases. So like I was like, I think I had like $300 to my name. After that, I just literally booked a one-way ticket to San Francisco. I was in Calgary for a bit. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna like live out of like these hostels. Like parents sent me some money for rent. So, like it was like I think it was like $1,000 to live with like 45 different people who were all attending like boot camp and stuff in this like big hostel house. So yeah, like was there, and then ended up going to a lot of like co-working spaces, and ended up meeting Nick from Harmony, and he was like, "Hey, like we're kind of looking for marketing people because they were all just developers like developing this like really cool protocol." So I was like, "All right, like I haven't really done marketing, but I think I can figure it out through my like consulting experience." So yeah, started like, going into more and more and realized that, like I interacted with the team, it was all the co-founders then. And I was like, yeah, this is really cool. And like, they had big treasury back then around, I think they raised around 18 million. So yeah, like just started working with them, really loved the whole San Francisco energy. They were very like family kind of like team oriented. They had these like barbecues and like, I guess like kind of like a small meetup for all these like AI crypto geeks on Fridays. So like early days was really fun because like, like no one really knew about Harmony, and like, it was just like everything you did was like amplified through actions, amplified through, every single move. Like it was like really exciting to kind of feel that growth, right? And then yeah, like
That's awesome, dude.
we got noticed by Binance, and then that was it. After we got into Binance
Wow,
Launchpad,
dude.
well, it became one of the hottest protocols, I guess, like during that era. So yeah, like slept in the server room, running these campaigns. Like there were days where we were just like sleeping like hour or two, just kind of like, pushing forward. We started with one marketing member, which is me, grew it to about 8, 10, I think, like in the end. So yeah, like super proud of the work that I've done at Harmony, and like super proud of what the team was able to achieve.
That's badass, dude. So did you guys pitch it to Binance as like a GameFi product at first, or
No,
what
no,
was
no, no,
the
no.
like
Harmony was
what
like
attracted their
purely L1. It was the whole season of L1. Basically, they were,
yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
I think it was after, like Ontology, Neo, what's it called? What was it? What was it? Some of the other ones. Obviously Ethereum, like it was
Phantom.
even before, yeah, Phantom was there. This was before Avalanche launched. So Avalanche wasn't there. Near wasn't there.
You guys hear me?
It was like just like, yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can hear you, bro.
Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, but it was like one of the
Okay.
first layer ones to launch on Binance because it was like a season of layer ones. So this is when they just started doing Launchpad as well. So the excitement was just incredible, and like the Harmony team was in New York, I think. While the Launchpad was going on, I think it was like actually consensus. So the hype was just unreal.
Yeah. Uh,
So go ahead.
You're cutting out, Lobby. We can't hear you, bro.
It's got to be like the spaces right now. I've seen this. Like, space has been super buggy for me as well.
Yeah, it's been acting up.
Yeah,
It was messing up a couple days ago too.
because I think it's like Elon's like trying different things right now, right? So I feel like
Yeah, well, he completely shut it down
yeah, I heard
like
that.
a couple weeks
I heard
ago,
that.
or it was like a week
Yeah,
ago.
yeah, yeah.
But
So yeah. Anyways, Wabi, can you hear us, or are you still having?
I don't think so. I don't think he
Yeah,
can. It shows him as a speaker right now for you, right?
yeah. But I mean, like, yeah, it's I don't think I can hear anything from him. I mean, we can keep going, yeah, until he kind of like figures out the mic issue and stuff.
Yeah, it's all good,
Yeah,
man. I can hold it down for him
Can
for
you guys
sure.
hear me now? It kept on muting
yeah,
me. Yeah.
Yeah,
Spaces.
we got you,
Yeah,
bro.
spaces have definitely been acting buggy. But
yeah,
it happens
yeah.
like sporadically. But whenever it does act buggy, it happens. It happens pretty hard. But uh, like what I was alluding to, man, like when you were mentioning
Go
ontology
get
and all that
Elon in
stuff,
here. The fuck is
man.
he doing?
Like
One day.
that does take me back, and I definitely remember Launchpad season, and
Yeah.
I think people forget that like CZ really helped out the space
Oh yeah.
back
Oh
in the
yeah, he
bottom of the
did.
bear market because
Yeah, he did.
I remember that stuff, man. Like
Yeah.
it was I know Harmony was included in the Launchpad, and you also had things like Matic, you had things like Kava,
Matic, yeah.
which was huge in DeFi summer,
Yeah,
Kava,
Kava. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
other things like Cody as well, and many other things. Like even I think even Sandbox was an IEO, right, guys?
Sandbox as well. Sandbox was
Yeah,
last year though. Sandbox was like right before the DeFi boom happened. It was like right during, I guess.
yeah,
Because I think they launched in 2020. Yeah.
yeah, 2020. I
Yeah.
remember that so clearly, man. It was like right around August, and yeah, that's another like thing that I think at least the narrative, as far as like metaverse and GameFi, I think things like that
Hmm.
are going to use the next cycle, because I know one thing that we were talking about on that space that we had met was that usually things that tend to have a huge run up and a lot of narrative cyclical play towards the end of a bull market, it usually carries over into the next one and more like a
Which is
longer duration,
interesting.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So
like
yeah,
you
we've
know
been
in
exploring that as well.
yeah, and this goes back all the way since the 2013 bull market, where you had other alternative payment systems, like you had things like XRP, which, like, if people don't know, XRP is actually quite an old token. I'm not shilling XRP at all here,
Yeah,
or
it's a
things like
very it's one of the
Litecoin,
oldest ones.
but
Yeah.
yeah, but like things like that, they ran up towards the end, and things like that ended up being some of the highest performers
Yeah.
in the next bull market. And then, I mean, as you
That
know,
dude, Jed, like he made like over $1 billion just on XRP and Stellar, right?
yeah,
The
yeah,
guy who sold
Michaela,
out the
yeah.
big Mount Gox.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Jeff McCaleb, I believe his
yeah, yeah,
name
Jed
is.
McCaleb. Yeah, yeah,
But like I think the one thing that I want to talk to you about is how do you think that's going to look like, the metaverse and the GameFi stuff? I know you guys have been getting into certain products that haven't been really like released onto the market, kind of like, I guess, stealth projects.
yeah.
Because usually, like, even with the 2017 cycle, like things like Neo and Waves, like
Yeah.
they all call themselves layer one, and like ICX, Aeon, like this whole interoperability layer one solution.
Yeah.
You remember that, the ETH killers,
Because
the layer one solutions.
Aeon was Toronto. I was in Toronto when Aeon started, right? That was when I was
Matt
just
spoke.
yeah, that's
Matt
yeah,
spoke.
Matt, yeah. So that's when I was just getting into crypto, and I remember Aeon prices were going so high. They were giving out $1,000 in Aeon in one of the meetups events I went to. And basically they were like, oh, we're doing a draw. And like basically what happened was like by the end, it's like, oh, sorry, it's not 1,000, it's like 1,500 now. I remember going, it was like a lot of money because like I was
What the
still in
hell,
Web 2.
man?
Yeah, it was like, it was during the meetup. It shot up like 50% or something, right? And I remember going, dude, crypto is just nuts. Like, like, in what world does this happen? It's like in the beginning, you're like, oh yeah, like we'll give 1,000. And in the end, it's like, oh, by the way, congratulations. It's like it's actually 1,500. I remember going, wow, this industry is nuts, right? So I remember that little segment when it's not often someone mentions Aeon, so yeah, it takes me back.
And like it's kind of trippy when you think about it, how it took the industry a little over 3 years to fully realize the incentive to use the tangible tech. Because back then, I think the only product that was available on these platforms were things like Switchio on Neo and things
Mm,
like ETH Delta on Ethereum. Like Uniswap hadn't even existed
no,
yet,
no, yeah,
and so I think like with the whole GameFi and Metaverse thing, like we were barely touching the surface this time last year.
that's really
So like
interesting. Yeah.
how do you think it's going to look like in the next 2 years, as far as from a user standpoint?
Yeah, so we have a couple of theses on that, and I think it's like really good that you kind of brought up the whole notion of like before Uniswap kind of came in, like Uniswap gave birth to, basically all the other DeFi products, right? Like, we were able to get eel farm based on the similar concept, and then, after Uniswap was possible, we started, after I guess like eel farm kind of came in, like we have things like Aave, Compound, like curve that basically like make up the infrastructure layer of like our current DeFi landscape. And then you had, all the layer twos coming in, and they were always kind of there, but I think it's like no one really saw the use case for them until DeFi became really prominent. So yeah, like based on kind of like that thesis, I guess, like I think it's gonna be really hard for us to understand what the next part might look like. We have some thesis on what that might look like, so let me share it here. Um, I think the problem statement for metaverse is that it's going to be a very, very expensive endeavor. Also, it has the limitation of it being a hardware first kind of adoption, which is always, always, always very difficult. If it's software, yes, I would understand. But with metaverse, it's like you're trying to replace a reality, and like big part of that is replacing your vision, right? And obviously, you need these classes, or you need like a virtual world that you can enter into, because you just can't have metaverse, like full on metaverse, without the visual, I guess, like visual replacement done first. So, we know what happened with Meta. We know what happened to, like the amount of funding that they're spending and the amount of quality that they were able to create, like with that funding. It is an incredibly expensive, incredibly difficult kind of task to have a metaverse world. So that's kind of the problem statement. Now, I think, metaverse, the initial adoption of metaverse will come from the big companies because of the problem statement that I just mentioned. So I know Apple is currently working on a metaverse. I think Meta is obviously the first front runner, but Microsoft as well. There's like all these big companies that are working on metaverse because the potential is huge. Like we kind of went from Web 2 information sharing economy into more of a Web 3 like value transfer economy, and I think in metaverse that kind of like translates the value transfer translates really well, because like the way we define metaverse is by doing three things. It's like you can call anything a metaverse, like like Sims, or I don't know, like like Second Life could be a metaverse, but we don't really define those as metaverse, because I think for metaverse, you need to hit three different points, which is the ability to be like the freedom. So ability to kind of like interact and do, have a lot of freedom within the environment. Financial aspect. So the ability to kind of like earn money or like do something of a value transfer within Metaverse. And then number three would be community. Like you have a community aspect, and all this is under the context of, your visions and, like your real life kind of like getting replaced by, like the Metaverse visuals. I think that's how we would define Metaverse. So just based on that, I think, because of that, I think the adoption will come from the initial, like the big guys. So the way we look at Metaverse and the way we invest in Metaverse is through some of these niches of like IP niches. For example, fashion. For example, like they have their own community base, like Zepeto X. Like it's like I guess like it's like a Second Life for MZ generation. So it's one of the most popular metaverse in Korea, and it's already has incredible adoption in Korea because like people like all these Gen Zs are like going in there like creating avatars and talking to each other or whatever. So yeah, I think it'll come from different segments of a metaverse, and then basically these big guys will want to acquire either the IP or the community, and I think that's how the adoption will happen, right? In our thesis so far. Um, like you mentioned, this is all with the caveat of like you just don't know what you don't know, and we don't know what the next Uniswap will be in terms of metaverse. We just haven't really thought that far. I know a lot of people are making what do you call it, statements or different speculations on what it could be, but in our kind of like model and our short term view of the future, we just can't guess what the next Uniswap will be for metaverse for the metaverse narrative. So yeah, like until we see a little more, we're gonna stick with the thesis that yes, our thesis is gonna be the big guys. Obviously, is gonna require a significant amount of like hardware investments and soft like server investments and all of that. And then they're going to be looking to acquire some of these IPs, communities, some of the quests or dynamics or systems, and that's what we kind of see as metaverse evolving into. Yeah.
So I know some hardware aspects, something that you had brought up. If you remember this company called High Performance Blockchain, essentially like they wanted to fuse the software of blockchain and then
Mm,
fuse that into computer hardware. And really the only thing that came out of that in the next cycle was something like Steppen GMT, where
mm,
it's like
mm, mm.
it was like that walking thing, like you put on some
Yeah,
shoes in the metaverse and you get paid
yeah,
to quote unquote walk or whatever.
yeah.
And something like that fused with hardware, like something in the next cycle, you need to bridge those two things together. But how that's gonna look, something
And
like a Pokemon Go sort of platform would be the only thing that
yeah,
I could really think of.
like yeah, like you're talking about like the like GPS, I guess, like geolocation. Like yeah, there's like a lot of like products kind of like leverage geolocation, like it's starting to resemble some sort of AR, artificial reality. But I think this might be a controversial take as well, but I don't think metaverse can be done by a Web3 company. I don't think because like metaverse can't come from a point of view of like value transfer. It has to come from a more of a user experience point of view because like like if we're replacing reality, like we need to have more like the user experience is going to be the most important aspect of and that's why I mentioned hardware, that's why I mentioned glasses, why it's so essential because like like we live for the experience, we live for user experience, right? It's literally metaverse, it literally defines that. So I think Web3 companies in general were too fixated on value transfers. It's just the industry, like our thesis when crypto, when we entered it was, it's going to be a global liquidity, right? Like probably the only feature and only core feature in crypto right now that stands strong, that it is a global liquidity market. So because of that, I think a lot of people are very fixated on, the value transfer and, like basically like a lot of the Web3 guys are all about DeFi, value transfers, speculation. So I don't think there's a lot of companies that are able to think about user experience in a way where, some of these other big companies like Apple or Microsoft or, Meta does. Like they're more into user experience in their own, like, because like that's what builds Web2 companies, right? They don't need to focus as much on, value transfer. Like they were built from the bottom up through getting traction, through getting users in their platform. Whereas like, Web3, I think we can all agree that, a lot of the user experience are lacking, but also at the same time, because of the way the system or backend is structured, like you're able to get away with like less of a user experience and, have more TBL, and that basically becomes more of a selling point, right? So that's one of the reasons why I feel like, yeah, Metaverse has to come from the Web2 side rather than Web3 side. And then Web3 side is always like you said, like step in. Web3 guys are always good at, once there's a product there, introducing the value transfer element into the system so that, yeah, like so that you kind of complete that whole picture.
Now,
So
go ahead, Payne. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, so do you think that there can be like multiple metaverses that could coexist and be successful, maybe like within Web3 and Web2? Because I agree that like if we're gonna have, I mean, I think a lot of people just have different definitions on what the metaverse is, and you were kind of getting into that. But like I think that begs some questions. Like number one, like do you think there could be multiple metaverses that coexist and could be successful simultaneously? And then number two, like do you think that the metaverse even needs crypto necessarily?
Yeah, so two-part question. I'll just answer the first one first, which is the like can metaverse like multiple metaverse coexist, right? When we think about metaverse, I think it's more going to be a phone model, as in like there's a hardware piece and then a software piece, right? Phone or like game devices. Basically, hardware piece, I think there's going to be only one or two that kind of reign, king at the end, which like kind of supplies the best user experience. I think I would even go as far as like the metaverse glasses will replace the smartphones. This is one of like the long-term thesis that we have right now. And obviously we've seen with phone or some of these game devices, like you have Nintendo, you have Xbox, you have PlayStation, right? That's it. Like hardware wise, like it's very hard to have like a wider ecosystem just because like like there are at the end a couple of players that kind of reign become a king, and others kind of like like take 10% of the market share. That's just way the hardware works. I think. So either that or like we see Apple and Samsung kind of taking like 80-90% of the market share, and like you have the other ones that like kind of like take the remaining, right? So for hardware side, I think it's going to be more of like um, couple of like whether that comes from Meta or whether that comes from Apple. I think there's going to be one or two companies that are taking the entire market share. Now for software side, this is where it gets interesting because software is how I would define metaverses, right? So once you have a hardware, I think you'll have, unless Facebook is like, I don't know if they will, but they might. Hardware, unless like the software is tied to a hardware, which kind of like Facebook is doing right now with Oculus and their own metaverse. I think there's going to be a lot of other options for different metaverses. So yes, in that aspect, I think there's going to be more than one metaverse depending on the community. I think it'll be more like a game, like how you interact with the game, or how you interact with certain, I don't know, yeah, like or like your different apps on your phone. There are going to be different communities that are being built in different metaverses. There's going to be different feel, different user experience. Maybe one metaverse has like a little more on like value transfer, or the other metaverse has like more on kind of like a community gaming aspect, community quest aspect. So or one metaverse would be more like kind of inclined to like, fashion, and, like you can experience like fashion a different way. They might have like different way to build like texture on the metaverse. So I feel like, yeah, like, especially in the early days after the hardware gets sorted out, I think there's going to be a lot more yeah, like a lot more software or like a lot more metaverses that are coexisting. Maybe it'll kind of like merge towards the end into, a couple of like strong ones. But initially, I think, like how we see this is like more of like a hardware software game that we've seen with kind of like, Xboxes or like sort of gaming devices or, phones of the world. And then what was the second question again?
I was saying, do you think the metaverse necessarily needs crypto?
Right.
Because that's one question I've pondered a lot.
Yeah, I think it will have certain elements of crypto because like if you look into crypto deep down, like we don't talk about blockchain a lot, but it is blockchain, right? So I think in an internet economy, like if we start moving a lot of physical assets into, virtual assets, I think that's when blockchain comes in because the the element of, like being something finite, the element of being something, like not copyable. A lot of that kind of applies to, like what it's the essentials that we need in I guess like virtual worlds, right? I don't know necessarily if crypto itself, because like crypto is more of like how I would define, it's like similar to stocks, right? It's a alternative assets, it's a global liquidity, and I think it'll live as its own kind of like asset class. And then some of the elements of, I guess, like blockchain will be integrated into, for example, like NFTs. Like if you want to sell your items or your clothes across different metaverses, I think that might be, where NFT kind of comes in, and you create a global marketplace based on a blockchain. So I think crypto or blockchain will be integrated in that way, not necessarily like the coins themselves.
All right, everybody. I want to give you a brief introduction to what's going on here. My name is King Wabi, and I'm presenting you guys Crypto World Radio with our favorite sponsor, Because Bitcoin. I am here joined by fellow loved member, Theo Payne, and also our special guest and speaker, the CEO of Momentum 6, Garlam Wan. And we are discussing all things pertaining to crypto, everything from DeFi, Metaverse, GameFi, all things of that nature. And I want to remind you guys that up top on the nest, there's a link to our community Discord, where you can usually find me in the voice chat and also in the general chat talking with you all. I'm very active in there. And if you're listening to us from YouTube, I want to remind you that we provide daily content for you guys Monday through Friday with a morning show, afternoon show, post equity market close show, and to wrap up your day or night or start your day, Crypto World Radio with my lovely voice, and you can stare at the frog on the rocket with many individuals from the industry that have many years under the belt, such as Garlam, and we also feature things like projects that are building protocols within certain ecosystems like Cosmos, like Ethereum, and also beloved individuals that you guys know and love, like Magoo, like Matt, and Trader Mercury, and other individuals that are well known within our circles. And if you guys want to come up and join the conversation, feel free. We're about a little over halfway done here. We want to thank Garlam for taking the time out of his day or night and joining us here for this quality conversation. So, all right, let's get back on the show. So, Garlam, brother, one question that I wanted to ask you, out of the last cycle that we had, what would you say is our innovation. The one tangible product that you can point at and say, all right, we did good. We did good this cycle. Because from the 2017 cycle, really the only thing that we had were smart contracts. And it was
Mm,
mainly just Ethereum, and everything just was not
mm,
used.
mm,
And to me, I think our greatest innovation from the last cycle was essentially things like Uniswap,
mm,
right? And things
mm,
like
mm.
and things like, the Cosmos Hub going live. So in your eyes, what do you think the last cycle added to the space as far as innovation goes?
Right, that's a really good question. I have been thinking about this for a bit. So I think I need to unpack this in my brain. Basically, last cycle, so every cycle kind of leaves something with, like you said, smart contract, I think every cycle leaves something with something that we gained and something that we could improve on, right? So I'll maybe, kind of divide the question like that. So for something we gained, right? I think, like you said, last cycle, yeah, like we were beginning to resemble some kind of DeFi, but I think the infrastructure still was like, infrastructure and the application side were still struggling to, really come up with the solution. And, like you said, Uniswap came along, and I think we started to really see what this could be, what we mean by DeFi, right? So I think, we kind of came off with transferring a lot of different TradFi kind of like financial instruments and financial I guess like assets and various different financial like vehicles into DeFi, lending, borrowing. That really wasn't possible before. Like we created a market for that. We yield farming. Like we kind of like had that idea adoption throughout 2020, 2021. Like you have like stable token yields now. Like a lot of these like are all towards building a fundamental on the bedrock of like a strong fundamental space, right? However, saying that, I still think crypto is very much speculation driven because of the revenue component. Like in the stock market, you basically have two components, which is like the financial bedrock becoming, like the fixed income or US bonds, that becomes a very strong financial bedrock. And then over that, you have, people spending money on these companies like S&P 500 companies or, the NASDAQ companies, like, like earn solid revenue and solid profit. And you base the stock based on that, right? Now, crypto doesn't really have that. That's why the P's are off the charts on crypto. Even sushi, I think I saw like at its lowest point, it was like, the P of it was like 850 or something, right? That's ridiculous in terms of like, traditional stock market terms. So because of that, I think, crypto still has that element of, I mean, the core feature which we kind of got involved into, which is global liquidity, right? That's still the one and only feature, I think, for crypto. And because of that, there's like rampant speculation, there's rampant, value devaluation, value appreciation. Obviously, it's like the shit that we, like love and hate. But I think it is the only kind of feature that's like ongoing and that's prominent right now for crypto. So that's kind of like, yeah, what we've kind of gained. I think, like transferring some of these financial assets. Also, I think in terms of, like you mentioned, like GMT step in. I think it's like the idea of like play to earn and like, the starting to resemble like, like typical things that we've been doing, like gaming, or walking, or like using some of these like activities that we do in day-to-day life, and then gamifying them, or making them earnable through value transfer aspect of crypto. I think we definitely got out of that. Also, this like I think last cycle we were talking about a lot of the trilemma, the decentralization. I think everyone was talking about the decentralization, the security, and speed, right? Now, I think we've gotten to a point where we figured out decentralization and speed because we realize that decentralization might not be as important in terms of protocols. But also, I think there's a lot of like layer twos, like working on the speed, new layer ones that are coming up with, like various different speeds, like Aptos, Sui, Say, like all these like layer ones that are Celestia, with the modular blockchain. So I think like everyone's trying to come up with their own way to speed because like we now realize is that okay, like if we really want to do finance here, which seems to be the first use case and the main use case for crypto right now, then the speed needs to be real time. Like if we want to have like high frequency traders, we want to have different hedge funds, we want to have like institutional capital coming in, we need to have the speed there. So I think that's what kind of like evolved into like. However, like I don't know if you kind of noticed, but I mentioned the security part, and I kind of left that out because I still don't think we figured that out. Not security in terms of blockchain security. I think blockchain security is still. I think it's like good as we stand. At least we haven't seen any like 51% attack, other than the time I think BSV or BCH got attacked, I think, or ETH Classic got attacked. So other than that time, I don't think we've seen like 51% attack. So I don't think that becomes as big of a problem as we get more and more adoption. I think what becomes a problem for especially like future liquidity and future kind of like what do you call it, like the market, I guess like yeah, the market size and like market adoption is security in terms of DeFi. Because like we kind of figured out, okay, like we can transfer all these assets and financial vehicles into crypto, but we are not able to secure these assets. Like these DeFi protocols just constantly getting hacked, and I don't want to put the security side and like regulation side on the same table, but like what security is on CeFi is regulation, unfortunately, and we've seen that with various different financial organizations like FTX that kind of go out and just crush the space, right? So I think that's what we need to figure out next. I guess on the CeFi side, it's like a little more regulation in terms of bad actors and what they're doing on their books, so that we know that like the assets are safe and their liabilities are not overwhelming the assets that they have. And on the other side is the DeFi security. So like if anyone wants to meaningfully use DeFi, I think we just need to sort that problem out. And I think a lot of the layer ones that are coming out has a different way of interacting with smart contract, where like assets are a little safer and it's harder to hack, with different checks and gates on their like cooked into like their individual protocols, right? That allows safety of a lot of these assets. So because like institutions are not going to come in, like big monies aren't going to come in for 100, 200, even a billion into a protocol if they have systematic risk, which is very, very easy systematic risk of getting drained, right? And we've seen that over and over. I think there's like $4 or $5 billion that's been hacked over the last 2 years. Like that's not a really good number to present to like people when you want the adoption. So I think that's what we need. Like I think that's what will kind of get done in the next cycle. Just and when we're just talking about like the prominent DeFi side. But yeah.
Yeah, when it comes to like bridging stuff, I think that definitely does have to be addressed. And I think protocols like Layer Zero are going to solve the whole bridging situation. And I also think that in terms of speed, there's a protocol coming out. I think they're coming out like sometime in 2024. They're called Nillion
Mm,
Network, and essentially they use this technology called nil message computation, which is essentially secure multi-party computation. And basically that allows like from the front end user aspect of things, it allows for essentially like near client server speed. So it pretty much instantly. And as far as a security layer built on top of it, it's essentially a layer two that's also integrated with some ZK Tech technology, and is able to use like private storage solutions that essentially uses like quantum grade security, and that's mainly going to be used for things like metaverse applications, because
Mm,
I think that in the next cycle, whether that's 2 or 3 years from now, I think our most vulnerable aspect is security when it pertains to that, because
mm,
essentially like you said, like the metaverse has to be applied to something that's also integrated with something that's hardware. So potentially
mm,
something like, I know you had mentioned Oculus, so maybe for the next cycle, that's the innovation, like an actual tangible product that users can go online or go to like their local Target, purchase
mm,
these things, and then have that be hooked up to this virtual world, and then through there the play to earn narrative actually becomes it comes to fruition. But the only thing with that is, how does the token model look like? Because like one thing that we don't want to repeat in the next cycle is have something like like an Axie Infinity, where
mm,
like the value prop for that was just farming the token, and the
mm,
incentive to sell was absolutely massive. Like other parts of the world were literally farming AXS for a
mm,
living. And, you know, one thing that I would like to see is something that's more like linear on the curve, like the 2017 cycle, rather than just like
Yeah,
hard.
2017 was not linear though. 2017 was the
Well, I
most
mean,
wildest shit that I've seen. It was way
well, I
more
mean, it
wilder
was
than
a beautiful
2020.
chart. The charts were beautiful. The chart was beautiful. You
Yeah,
had crazy dumps along the way, but like it was a nice continual cycle, with
right.
exciting developments. And yeah, man.
So I
What
think
are
yeah,
what are
like
some?
just on the token side, right? Like I keep saying, like I keep mentioning in this call, like the only thesis that I had when I came into this market, and it still holds true, is that crypto equals global liquidity. That's it. Like that's literally it for what made me fall in love with the place. And like what still keeps me in today, it is a global liquidity market. It's an alternative asset class, and I just knew this will be big. Like when I just kind of heard the concept, I heard what was going on for the ICOs. I was like, this is it. Like I want to spend the next decade or 2 decades of my life here, right? So that still holds true because the lack of revenue, and I think that's where the token model kind of comes from. Like it's like a pre-loaded kind of like future growth model where people are trying to predict like the future growth of like 3, 5, 10 years, what that price will be today using the tokens, right? And I think that happens because of the lack of the revenue, right? Like because you don't have revenue, if you don't have revenue, people's imaginations can go wild, right? And because the industry is relatively new, there's no, we're constantly coming with new frameworks, new systems, new, like we just don't have the maturity to value some of these companies or some of these projects like we do for TradFi. So I think what needs to happen, especially for things like Metaverse, I don't think it can start from a token aspect. Maybe they have like a token as a share. I also don't agree like this whole aspect of like token being used on a like more of a share or equity kind of like platform versus like utility. I think those should be very separate because it fucks you with your governance, right? Like if you have token that's very speculative and governance nature, sorry, that's very like like that resembles equity and like governance and like control of the company. But at the other end, like you have that same token being used for utility, buying shit on the market, using as currency, using as in-game, whatever, right? I think those are not, like those are separate for a reason in TradFi, and we should do the same thing. It's like, like you go to, I don't know, I don't know if Riot Game has stocks right now, but like you go to like, Riot Games and you start buying skins with, on League of Legends using your stocks. that's just a weird activity, and like I don't think that's going to introduce a lot more complex variables, like like basically like is your in-game token going to be okay from all this speculative pressure that comes from outside of the game economy, right? Like you have all the stock market, it's listed on exchanges, and like that fucks with your experience of using in-game, right? So just based on the token model, I think it has to be first, like it has to be separate, like the governance aspect and the utility aspect just has to be separate. And maybe they'll find a way to marry the equity aspect, traditional equity aspect into a governance token aspect. Maybe there's like a new model there. But yeah, just like based on that, I think because of token model that we have, and I think it'll naturally get solved. Let's say if like some of the bigger companies kind of come in and they start creating something on metaverse, or creating something with blockchain, and it has a fundamental aspect, not just like the future hopium for the revenue, future hopium for the growth, but actual revenue, and like they get to be judged based on TradFi metrics. I think that is going to solve the whole question of like speculation and like linear growth and all of that, because we'll be looking at it with the same eyes that we look at TradFi. Maybe there was a token model that's introduced, but still, like the way we view those projects, the way we view those I guess like systems will be very similar to how we view TradFi.
Perfect, man. Thank you. I know TradFi has been brought up a lot, especially going into the next year with the Fed funds rate potentially topping out at 5% plus. Do these macro headwinds affect the vision that you guys have
Of
going
course.
into 2023, 2024? Like, what are some things that that you look at being in charge of like a crypto exclusive company?
Right. So I think we definitely, we're having this unprecedented, kind of like I guess like an asset bubble, that may or may not pop. So I think what we realized was crypto, there's one money, right? There's one money source. There isn't a crypto money, and there's not a TradFi money, right? There's one money source, right? And depending on the flavor of the week, flavor of the month, flavor of the year, like I think the money kind of transfers and rotates into different asset classes, and obviously crypto is one of those like rotations. So because of that, I think we've seen with like a whole coupling of like the S&P with crypto, and we've seen over throughout the years like just how coupled they are, right? Except for some cases, because of that, we still hold the thesis that okay, like crypto, TradFi, same money, and everything's gonna come in from a same kind of source. And if we have that assumption as true, then we definitely need to start looking at TradFi markets and what it's doing. And TradFi markets, through all the money printing and quantitative easing, I think we have gotten to our place where like inflation's pretty sticky. Although it's coming down, but I think it's pretty sticky with, even the job performance and like the job numbers very, very strong in US right now, which means that there isn't a near term of inflation slowing down, because people constantly, unfortunately, the way this is going to get fixed, and Fed Jerome Powell keeps saying this, is that like we definitely need to have fewer jobs. It's just like matter of the fact. It's just like people just need to get laid off in order for there to be less demand, in order for the inflation to come down, right? There's some aspects like jobs that aren't happening right now, so we're still very skeptical and cautious. Also, with the whole echo bubble, asset bubble that we have at the moment, we have the housing that went insane. We have obviously the inflation. We have the stock market that has come down a little bit, but S&P is still only I think 15% down or something, or 10% down. So I think there's a lot of like still like correction that may or may not happen. We're being cautious. I think there's also the element of sorry we talked about the liquidity side. Yeah, I think there's an element of like just kind of like these like global headwinds of like political conflicts, and I think yeah, I don't know how many people majored in econ here, but like basically in econ the price for creating something like the global free trade basically brings everything down for the price, right? Because like you have I forgot what the term was, but like each country has their more effective way of like production, or like based on like what kind of what kind of lands or what kind of systems that they have. So if we have this global headwind of like Germany's arming up now, everyone else is arming up, I think they're talking about using yuan as a like petro currency, like we're kind of like at the cusp of potentially ending this whole free trade agreement that we had with all of all of us, and it might be going into more of like like create your own food, create your own manufacturing, create your own shit, right? So if we get into that, we suddenly will see a drastic drop in terms of like world wealth, because world wealth is created on credit, right? And I don't know how many people watch Ray Dalio, but very simple concept of like another man's credit is like another man's asset, or like another man's like like basically like if someone borrows, that becomes like an asset, or like their own kind of like yeah, I guess they're an asset. Yeah, so it's like someone else's like debt is like someone else's like profit or money, right? So you get into this cycle, and because the world is built on credit, I think it's going to be very hard for the like the world to grow further if we get into this whole like wars, and like like divisions of like divisions of labor on like various different countries, like and lastly, the catalyst itself, right? Like I think a lot of people are like kind of looking forward to the pivot, and people are like, hey, like what's gonna happen to the pivot? Like like when is it gonna happen, right? I don't think people are realizing, maybe people do, but once we have the pivot happen, then what? Like what's after? We have recession left. Like the pivot happens, sure, like they're gonna be like, okay, like we might be slowing down now, like maybe we'll move it up to 5.5 or 5% next year. Inflation seems to be slowing down, but yeah, like so are everything else. Like people are going to be very, very scared. There's going to be new revenue adjustment for what companies can earn. I think the P ratio might come down a lot as well, as it did so far. I think it's sitting at like 16 or 19 or something. It might come down further because of the fear, because we haven't had this unprecedented like money printing, and followed by asset depreciation. So people might get a lot more scared based on the past knowledge that they have, or past PTSD from 2008. So basically, based on all of that, I think you can kind of see with my tone that we're pretty skeptical, and we're pretty cautious in terms of what will happen. So a lot of the investments and a lot of theses that we make now are very different from what we did, maybe a couple of years ago, even last year, because we need companies that are very strong on balance sheet. We need companies that have shortest distance to revenue and cash flow, and we need companies that are be able to kind of like reduce their burn rate. We need leaders and team members and founders that are able to make that tough decision of like knowing what the core products are, and knowing what the most impactful products are, and based on that, being able to cut out a lot of the fat that they have. So that's kind of like general answer. I could probably deep down further, but I think we're running out of time. So yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect, dude. Like you said everything that us here at Because Bitcoin believe in, man. Definitely, like it's all one big trade, and people should be aware that this entire market is global liquidity. It's essentially like a huge indice,
Mm-hmm.
and Fed pivots always equal recessions, and it's just a matter of like how's that recession gonna look like. But I definitely feel that out of that recession, we'll see the strongest surge of innovation that this asset class will
Mm-hmm.
ever
Mm-hmm.
see. from projects that were mentioned here. Like I know you had mentioned Celestia, and that's one project that I would absolutely adore the honor to host on here
Yeah,
sometime next
I
year.
sent them.
You
Yeah, I
know me,
sent them your
bro.
blurb. Yeah, yeah. They haven't gotten back to me, so I'll ping them again in January. But also at the same time, yeah, like I just want to mention like something that you said. Yeah, like I think there's gonna be like biggest innovations here, and it's gonna be really, really stupid to leave the industry now. I think it's honestly one of the best times to get into the industry. Like I have, like just for my personal story, I have people, I never, even if I lost like, all my capital like three times in my, like experience in the last 5 to 6 years, but I never left in this industry. I've always believed in it. I've always believed that I could do something big in it. So, like I stayed in. A couple of my buddies, like, not a lot of them actually, like 80%, the people that I started with, all left. 80, 90% just kind of like when that 2018, 19 came, especially in 19 when they felt like, the bear market has been dragging for like over 2 years now. They're like, okay, like I got to do something different. Like, like I don't know if I believe in this anymore. And then, 2020 happened. That was like a lot of like I think it was like a lot of people in the know that were kind of like doing, the initial Wi-Fi and, like IDOs and, like Uniswap pumps and, 2021 kind of came and with the whole metaverse, kind of like metaverse crowd and NFT crowd came in, and that's when they came in. They came in like, June, July, when information was like a little more public and like the I guess like the spread of information like reached to more of the critical mass. And they came in July and were like, "Yo, let's go again, right?" But like we've seen, like November was the top, so like you don't get that luxury of like being in there, being early, building your network, building your product, building your kind of value add. And they came in and they struggled for a bit to understand what was going on. Like some of these guys were using MetaMask for the first time in like June, July of 2021. So you can understand like if they want to build their network, it'll take like a month or two. And finally, yeah, like maybe in October they start putting some capital in, or like throughout the month they feel like they don't have a lot of time, so they put a lot of capital in. November comes, you're wrecked, right? Like after November, you just basically got wrecked because your frame of thinking is different. Like a lot of people exit in November because we've been experiencing this for the last 2 years, and just human nature that okay, like 2 years, okay, like this is like pretty enough. I think I should probably start taking some bags off. Whereas for them, it's different. Like they don't think about like how long other people have been in. They just think about how long they've been in, right? And they were like, okay, like hey, like I've been here for a month, like I have a target of 3x, so I'm just gonna stay in. I'm gonna do leverage, whatever, right? And turns out the run has been going on for the last 2 years, and you're very, very, very late to the party. So, like I think a lot of people make that mistake, and I still see a lot of people leaving. Like we see, like big giants leaving every day in this industry now. I think MGNR just like announced that they kind of left. They deleted all their Twitter. A lot of the venture capital people that I used to work with and do deal flows, a lot of them has left as well. So I think it's a bad mistake to leave now because like you said, I think a lot of the opportunities and innovations and like things that are going to be relevant in the next cycle are going to be coming from this like I guess like bear market, I guess. So yeah, like definitely, stay in, try to like do something that you can earn money with, but never lose pulse because yeah, like next cycle it's gonna reward you, very, very handsomely.
I definitely agree with that. Definitely never keep your eyes off of the industry. So before we wrap things up, we have Big Airmass up here. He requested to be a speaker. Airmass, I want to introduce you to Garland. He's the head of a crypto firm, Momentum Six. He's been in the industry since 2017, and yeah, he's been with us for close to an hour now, brother. So welcome, dude. If you want to add any statements, ask any questions, feel free.
Well, you know my position. I think that a lot of what I hear in spaces is a lot of these, CNBC narratives, which everybody already knows about inflation, Fed, rates. So I just don't think it's going to be a factor this time, and so I'm expecting some major pumps coming very soon. And other than that, everything else is absolutely like you want to, obviously when no one's paying attention, um, you want to be accumulating and buying aggressively when no one wants to buy, and then sell it when no one wants to sell, I guess. Although I do think that in the upcoming, uh, I do believe in kind of like the um, Zushu's, super cycle theory. I think that, kind of when we get going this time, I think that, Bitcoin will kind of not like it'll reach like very high prices and probably be very stable going forward. I don't think we're going to see any more of these 80%, 75% crashes going forward. So I look forward to that because, it's nice to be able to just huddle in peace and not worry about price all the time. So I don't know, things are looking good overall. I think things are looking good. I'm very bullish. And yeah, keep your eye on the ball, guys.
Good stuff.
All right. So
It's
with
great to
that
hear
being
from you, MS.
So he's a national treasure of ours, Garland. He's quite an amazing character. Always appreciate Big Air Mass coming up into our spaces. So yeah, guys, looks like we're hitting that hour mark. I want to thank you guys one more time for tuning into Crypto World Radio, and also Garland, thank you so much for coming up into the
Yeah,
space,
of
man.
course.
Thank
It's
you,
always
bro.
Appreciate
fun.
it, dude.
Of course.
Been looking forward to this for a while now, brother. It's good to have you on. Good to talk shop with you, and I look forward, to be in the process of engaging in your community and hopefully you guys with our community, and
Yeah, let's do this
it's
more
gonna
often.
be
Yeah.
it's gonna be fun for over the next couple of years. I think the next cycle is honestly gonna be the greatest cycle in our lifetimes. Out of this recession, I think Bitcoin will truly be the prime asset to bounce out of the recession, and through all of that, all digital assets will follow right behind it. So thank you again, Garland. Thank you guys so much,
Thank
and
you guys.
yeah, guys, that about wraps it up for another episode of Crypto World Radio. My name is King Wabi. On behalf of Because Bitcoin, I want to thank all of you guys for tuning into Crypto Spaces. And if you're listening to us from YouTube, thank you so much. Be sure to like, turn on bell notifications, give a comment, drop any comment. Any feedback is good feedback. It was a pleasure discussing everything from GameFi, Metaverse, DeFi, and a little bit of macro talk at the end. I know our boy Carter at Market Talk, that's more of his expertise, although I am slowly learning more about those things. It's definitely always a good opportunity to speak macroeconomics with other experienced individuals in the crypto space. Thank you guys. Thank you, Garlam. Thank you, Airmass, for coming up. Shout out to the crowd. Kimchi, what's up? Nicholas, what's up? Thank you, Feel Pain. Thank you guys so much. And
Thanks,
that's
guys.
it. That's it from me, guys. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'll see you guys tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. Eastern time, where we'll have Matt on. You guys have seen him on Market Talk a few times, so we're gonna be discussing some Bitcoin and previous cycles and things like that. He does come from the 2013 cycle, so it's going to be pretty cool hearing from an OG. And the day after that, we'll have Magoo. So that about wraps it up, guys. Thank you. Take care. And it was a pleasure.
Take care,
Appreciate
bro.
you, Wabi. Appreciate you, Garland.
No worries. Thanks,
Take
guys.
care,
Bye.
Garland. Take care, brother.
The trading current is just math. It's just math. It has a 95.45% hit rate when we deviate outside of CP2 and CN2. All you had to do is recognize that 95% of the time when we get over here, under this blue line, we get some sort of mean reversion. So let's just assume you long right here. 95 out of 100 times, when I buy this, I'm gonna get some sort of bounce. It's just math. Look what would have happened as we move up. Look at the bounce that came after. And now look where we are. If you had just blindly followed the current, you take all emotions out of it, and you say, I'm gonna trust the statisticians. You would have bought Dow Jones somewhere down here under 30,000, depending on how you wanna measure it from absolute top to bottom, 20% move. We also have multi-time frame alerts. You don't even have to be at your computer on TradingView. You can ping your phone. Now the current has some really awesome features, and I would urge you guys to join our Discord to get access to it. We give it away for free as a tool to the community. It's just math. There's really no need to overcomplicate things, not even in the slightest.